Nell, welcome to Resilient Retail. I am so excited to have you on the show. I just got off talking to Haley LaSavage. Our listeners know Haley very well, and she talks about you a lot. She really loves you and your company. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Hill House Home?
Yes, absolutely. And I love Haley. The love is very mutual. So, excited to hear. It's a shared thing. It's not a one-way thing. So I'm Nell Diamond. I'm the founder and CEO of Hill House Home. I live in New York City in the West Village. I have 3 kids somehow. I don't know how that happened very quickly. But they're nice people, And I run Hill House Home, as I mentioned. So Hill House has been around since 2016, and we sell everything from pillowcases, bedding, towels, baby products, all the way up to our hero product, which is called the nap dress. And I am wearing one right now. And that's what people usually know us because of. And I'm having a good time. I love it.
So tell me the story about how you came into Hill House Home. Like, how did the brand, what was your story before? And how did you end up developing this brand that had multiple different product categories? And then we'll get into the nap dress. But I definitely want to just talk about kind of that entrepreneurial spirit that you had before you got into this viral sensation, because it seems like it was a big part of why you became very viral in your design later.
Yes, well, so it's funny because I never, ever would have predicted I would be an entrepreneur. I am somebody who likes structure. I am somebody who likes a plan. I like to know what's coming for me and what's around every corner. And that is the polar opposite of entrepreneurship. So I think that, younger me would be very surprised, but at the same time, delighted that there are so many dresses in my life. So I started Hill House Home right out of business school. So I went to the Yale School of Management, and Hill House Home was in an incubator at Yale. So I was getting my MBA, and Yale has a really great entrepreneurship program. And so I was sitting alongside students who were doing things like figuring out a better way to transport organs and all sorts of kind of amazing, life-changing things. And I was building Hill House. So, talking about kind of monograms on pillowcases and thread count and all those things. But you'd be shocked to hear just how much we kind of had in common, all of those students. And I really built Hill House for a few reasons. I think I've always been a retail obsessive. I think I didn't really have the words for that when I was younger, but I grew up in the UK, I grew up in London, and I watched, first of all, the kind of iconic British high street brands like Topshop emerge. And I was obsessed with them. I used to kind of make a pilgrimage to the Topshop in Oxford Circus every Saturday. And then I watched the big brands from America come to Europe. So my very first job ever was at Abercrombie & Fitch in London. It was their first UK store. It was on Savile Row. Yeah, it was a very controversial thing at that point to have Abercrombie exist on this storied street, Savile Row. But it was amazing. And I think that for me I was born to American parents, but, spent most of my life in the UK, seeing this kind of storytelling behind a big American brand coming into a new country was really, really pivotal. And I think my learning about what makes a brand great. So I think I've always been obsessed with how brands tell stories and how brands, stand for something and kind of develop an aesthetic, from a design perspective. So I really wanted to do that myself, I think. And then further, I really wanted to do that for the home. So, I've always loved the home space. As I mentioned, I grew up kind of moving a lot, and my bedroom has always been a very important space to me. And while I love fashion and there are so many options in fashion, I couldn't really figure out why it felt like in the home space, you weren't supposed to make as many design choices, right?
Yeah.
Unless you had an interior designer and it was very high end, the options were pretty limited. And so I wanted to kind of bring this approach of design focused thinking, really colors and happy prints and patterns, and allow people to put a little bit of their personalities into their home. So that was the original thinking. And then now, 6 years later, here we are.
Here we are. It's so funny because I have this very personal connection to that home and personality connection. I was an elite gymnast when I was very young. And so 90% of my time was spent in the gym. And so as a kid, for some reason, I became very obsessed with like my room. Like that was the one place I felt like I could express my personality. So I went through periods of like my room was green for a little bit. And then I came home one time and my favorite color was orange. And my mom had painted my room like bright orange for a couple of years. And then it switched to light blue. And it was always something to me that felt I wasn't super confident in expressing myself through fashion, but through my house or in that stage, like my room felt like a very strong way for me to express myself without feeling uncomfortable about it. And I think that there's a lot of kind of like home furnishing companies that almost miss out on that storyline of it. It actually is very expressive of who you are. How did you start designing those pieces and figuring out, okay, was it coming from a personal, this is what I would have wanted, and now my customers are connecting with it? Was it a combination of hearing from your customers what they wanted? Or how did you even get into that space to understand? I mean, fashion is such like, and again, we'll get to this, but like fashion is such a very personal way of expressing yourself, but also so is the home. And it's less talked about in the home. So I'm curious how you approach the design factor of that.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, I think, interesting. And you know, hindsight is 2020, but I always look back and I can see at the beginning stages of designing products for Hill House that even I, as kind of our design person, was nervous to go too far. And as we have grown as a company, our aesthetic has gotten so much stronger. And that's because our customers have really given us that permission to say, show us what you guys think. And that's been really powerful. And I can see some of the like timidness that I had as a designer at the very beginning, being like, okay, I love this, but I'm nervous people won't, right? It's like the business school side of my mind that's like, but have I tested it? Like, do I know? What's the data say? And so I think that I'm happy to be at this stage, 5 or 6 years later, and really know our customers and know and have that trust with them to go a little crazier. But I would say we started, I think what you say is so interesting. I really see the home and the bedroom in particular as this little jewel box, and it's a place where you can have that expression, and it can be so powerful for your mental health. If you think about it, it's the place where you wake up and fall asleep every day. And the effect on your mental health of loving that space, I think, is huge, right?
Yeah.
If you fall asleep in a space that just does not feel good to you, and that's so subjective, right? Like, clutter might feel good to some people and not good to others. And a million books on the nightstand might be really great for some and not for others. But yeah, I mean, I think I took it very literally from a design perspective at the beginning. And so monograms were actually huge for us. Monograms were kind of the most important thing we did, and it was what we were known for. So quite literally, people putting their names on things. And I think the twist that we had, right, was that you didn't have to put your names. So we were taking this like old school art of the monogram and saying, put your favorite song lyrics on there, put a date that's special to you, put the name of the street you grew up on as a child. And people really got creative with it. And I think that was like an early indicator that our customer was really ready to have some more fun in their home space and wanted to put their own spin on it.
Well, something that like not a prepped question by any means, because it just came up in my head as you were saying this, is I feel like I'm having these conversations between some brands are so uniquely focused on their customers, and it doesn't matter what we want or what we care about. It matters only what our customers care about. And then the opposite side, I've had a lot of conversations where I'm pulling out the insight of, but trust your intuition and what you want. And why are you creating this business? And it seems like the magic happens when you can find this kind of crossover between the two. How did you start to find that? And also like figure out the balance between what do I need to be as Nell Diamond and what does Hill House Home need to be for my customers? And how do I create a magic combination of the two of them so that things can become as popular as they have?
You're absolutely right. It exists somewhere in the middle of that. And I think that it's a constant kind of iterative process to figure that out. And that people who are on too far a pole either way can really suffer. So, if you think of a brand that's like so far into its own design and aesthetic that it quite literally is not listening to what people want, that's, just as dangerous as the opposite. And so I think that, for us personally, I'm really grateful that we had the first kind of few years to grow low and slow. We really focused on financial sustainability, so being profitable, and growing our customer base organically. So we really did not focus on paid marketing at all. And that meant that we could test. That meant that we could be conservative, right? So this was like a big business school thing that I did take away as something that's so positive. We did minimum viable products all the time. And what I mean by that is we would literally like have a sketch of something and throw it up on Instagram stories and see how people responded. And, I keep seeing this trend of like, small or not small businesses, but like D2C businesses, like asking people to vote on colors on like their Instagram stories. Like, should we do this in pink or blue? And it's so funny because you can look at that and be like, all right, guys, like just figure it out. Like, you decide what's your color palette for the season. So I think it can go like both ways, but getting those early indications of what people are kind of interested in and what speaks to them is like the huge power of a direct business, right? If you think of the old school model of like somebody's only ever going to find out about your brand in, Bergdorf Goodman or Barney's or Saks Fifth Avenue, then the founder and the designer is rarely going to have that direct relationship with customers. So we should be taking advantage of these channels that we have right now to get that feedback and constantly get that feedback and kind of use the feedback.
Yeah, it seems like this perfect balance between I know who I am and what I want to create and this like feeling I want our customers to feel, and then asking which color gives you that feeling. And that feels like more of that like marketing to the mindset or the psychographic versus the demographic, or just saying, here's what we have, you have to choose between these colors, is you're allowing your customers into part of the brand building that is what they want, but you're also still setting them up with, here's what we represent, and here's who we are, and you get to kind of tinker with the smaller parts with us. So now we have to get this out of the way. I mean, we have to talk about the nap dress. You're wearing the new black nap dress, which is fantastic. I just told you I was talking to Haley LaSavage, who loves the nap dress, obsessed with Hill House. And I pulled some stats that I want to read to the audience because there's no other way to really express how massive of a product and moment you guys have had this year. So I am pulling this quote. In February of 2021, the nap dress was released. The long-awaited black nap dress was released. Hill House Home sold $1 million worth of inventory in 12 minutes. See, this stat was so big that I even lost how to say it. You sold $1 million worth of inventory in 12 minutes. 50% of those being nap dresses. How did you... I think I hear this question all the time on people on social media or small business owners, and we talk about this like virality. How do you go viral? How do you do it? I always say there's not an equation for it, but you figured something out where you released a product that has sold out every time you put it on your website. And then, in 2021, when everyone was saying like people are holding onto their wallets really closely, $1 million worth of inventory in 12 minutes. There's no other way to put it than this is a viral product. Tell us about the story of creating the nap dress and everything that's gone on since you've created it.
Yeah, I mean, well, so first of all, I should say, that is not the type of thing that happens overnight, right? Like we always hear these stats, and I think I remember being in the early stages of entrepreneurship, hearing stats like that and just being like, it's just never going to be us. In the first year of our business, we did not do $1 million, like $1 million in 12 minutes now. Not even in a whole year in our first year of business. So I think it's important to note that took, it took time, and it was a real process on so many levels. It's not just, the inventory. It's not just the design. Also, getting our site to a place where it could, support that kind of excitement. I think getting our customer service to a point where it can support that kind of excitement, getting our fulfillment center there was a huge, huge, huge journey. And so I think that those stats, really represent those kind of 5-6 years of journey. But so the nap dress. So the nap dress, was, first of all, I should say it's a misnomer. It's not actually a dress for napping. And sometimes I like, when I'm feeling particularly mean about myself, I'll like go on Twitter and search nap dress just to like see all the people who are like, why would you have a dress for napping? You know, they're like so mad. And
why
like,
wouldn't you have a dress for napping though?
I know. Well, the big thing was always like, who has time for naps? And I'm like, definitely not me. You know, I'm like a full-time working mom with 3 little children. I would love a nap. I do not have time for naps.
You're like, I've built an entire business, D2C and retail empire, and I have 3 kids. I'm not actually napping in this dress. It just hopefully feels like a nap when I'm wearing it.
Exactly. So you get it. So, you know, it's a misnomer. Our customers are not really napping in this dress. You know, we have many versions of it. So we have a version that is great for overnight sleep. I wear it to sleep every night. But that name has been really funny. But so we launched the nap dress in 2019, and we worked on the product development for the nap dress for quite some time, 6 months to a year. And the kind of birth of the nap dress was this idea that I really wanted. I've always been a dress girl, and I really wanted a product that I could kind of wear around the house and feel dressed in, feel good in, but also be really comfortable. And I kind of believed that wasn't impossible, right? That we could have something that felt practical and beautiful at the same time. And, you know, obviously the concept of a house dress is certainly not our concept. That's been around for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years. But I think what was really important to me was that this dress worked on a range of body types, and literally like my own range of body types. You know, I've been pregnant with twins in the last year, and my body has changed so much throughout that process. And I wanted something that could carry me through that, but that also looked great on a range of body types, you know, amongst my friend group. I think I was also thinking about, and I wanted something that kind of washed well. You know, you could throw in the washing machine and not worry about it. I don't have to send it to the dry cleaner. And that felt presentable. So, you know, if my mother-in-law's in the kitchen, I'm not feeling naked. And if I'm, you know, running out to the grocery store quickly to go grab something, I don't feel like I'm in my pajamas. And I, because, you know, that was kind of a tall order, it took us quite some time to develop the product. And I remember the night before we launched it, just thinking like, oh, people are going to make fun of me. They're going to be like, I have no interest in wearing this dress. I don't care about that look. And then B, like, maybe this is just something that I'm obsessed with, right? Like maybe other people are just not going to be into this. And so I think I was so excited when we dropped the nap dress the next day to see that people loved it. People really loved it. And it certainly wasn't, you know, kind of the excitement that we expected. I think we expected it to be, you know, another product in our assortment. And it's been amazing to see over the last, you know, kind of almost 2 years of living with this product, just how much people have really felt attached to it, and have this kind of emotional reaction to the product, which we do too.
Something that I'm hearing from you, and like I have followed you on Instagram for a while now, and so I understand how fantastic you are at this, but in order to drop a product that has this, you know, drop number 1, excuse me, have this much of kind of a just immediate reaction, you have to have had a community that connected with something deeper than just, you know, being comfortable in a dress, that really like had that emotion with you. And when you're talking about it as a woman, I'm feeling it of like, I'm not a dress girl, but if I am going to be a dress girl, better be comfortable, or else I'm going to hate it even more and I'm not going to do it. And that's just the way it is. And so there are so many layers to this kind of decision to want to be able to be in a dress, feel comfortable in the home, out of the home, in any situation. But that had to have come from both intuition and community. Like we talked about at kind of like the top of this interview. How did you go about building a community where then you dropped a product that they were so ecstatic about that even on the very first drop sold out so quickly? Like, was it that community instinct, or was it more of that personal styling instinct? And what was the balance between those two?
Yeah, you know, so one of the kind of my favorite things to say that my team just makes fun of me so much for is I always say show, don't tell, which is like what English teachers say to you when you're in 9th grade and you're you're learning how to write an essay. But it's really core to what we do at Hill House. And so that relates to the nap dress because, you know, as I mentioned, a core piece of the nap dress is this practicality, beauty, kind of relationship. And so we don't want to just tell you over and over again, this is practical and this is beautiful. We want to show you, and we don't want to just tell you it looks good on all body shapes. We want to show you. And so what we've done is we've partnered with, and this has been, especially over kind of quarantines in 2020, this was, the main way that we showed people our products. We partner with influencers to show us the product. And, we let them direct, produce, shoot, style their own photo shoots and show us how they wear it and show us how they live with it. And that's just been so powerful for us because we really get to show people the wide range. And I think that, certainly at the beginning, and if somebody follows me on Instagram, they might think like, oh, she is very girly. Like, I'm not going to be able to do that because I'm not that style, whatever. And I know that. I like love bows and love, I'm always wearing dresses and hair accessories and all those things. But at the same time, I also have friends who wear the nap dress with their Converse and like an amazing leather jacket and just look so cool in a way that I never would look cool. And I want to show that too. So influencers have kind of been key to that strategy to really show us how they live and breathe. We also will repost a lot of customers in our community's photos because we love seeing how people kind of style their product and live with that product. It's that piece of, showing how you live and showing that the product does take you from your Zoom call all the way to drinks with your girlfriends to like a preschool, parent-teacher conference or whatever you're doing in between. And this year, that's been so powerful. I mean, we've had people share stories of getting their vaccine shot in the nap dress, getting engaged in the nap dress, like doing all these like amazing things, moving into their first apartment by themselves in the nap dress. And so it tends to be something that people pair with these big milestones. And that's been really exciting. And so we show that. So I think that community piece has really, you can't fake that. From my perspective, right? Like we didn't, set out to tell somebody to go post the photo of them getting their vaccine in a nap dress. It's something that has really built on itself. And then further, I think the most important piece about community is that it's only built off of strong products. So that would not exist if the product was not good. These people would not be taking those photos. They would not be sharing it with their friends if the product wasn't good. So any community building strategy is inherently built on the strength of your product and your product development.
Yeah. And it also sounds like so much of the product is not just you buy the product and go home with it and the brand says like, great, that's conversion. It's also how do you find success with that product, and success with the product a lot of times like tech. We're talking about, okay, how do you post a photo to Instagram? How do you get 10 likes? All this. But the physical product, it is, how do you wear it? How do you make it the best version of yourself in that dress? And to be able to pull from so many different styles and say, all these influencers or these customers are using it in this way, you can feel your best self or whatever version of yourself you're buying when you buy that nap dress. We can help you become that with this content. Something I know that a lot of retailers, especially smaller retailers, are thinking about is influencer marketing because it's massive. Like we buy things based on our friends telling us they're fantastic or someone we trust on Instagram or an influencer on YouTube. How do you go about finding the right influencers that can tell your brand story in the right way? It feels very similar to a lot of the wholesale conversations we had where all of a sudden you are putting your brand integrity in somebody else's hands and your brand narrative in somebody else's hands. How do you go about picking what influencers will hold up the brand that you, Nell, have worked so hard to develop and that identity that you have really put through and through in your company? How do you find the people who can hold that up in the right way?
It's such a good question. I mean, I think take it seriously. I think this is not something where you look at a couple follower accounts and send somebody a PayPal. I think you really have to take it seriously. You cast it like you cast a shoot. You cast it like you cast kind of anything that you would have done 10 or 15 years ago. And then I think, speaking for Hill House in particular, there are quite a few different things we look at. We certainly are looking at like engagement and how people are interacting with their followers, but we're also looking to see, does this person have a strong point of view? And I think the point of view is so important, right? Like, is this person telling a story on their own Instagram? And, how are they interacting with their followers? Like, what do they stand for? All those things. But I think, the more difficult thing, I think, for many founders, particularly founders and management teams that are really focused on their brand and their brand voice, you have to let these influencers put their brand voice on it. So, I've always thought it was, totally didn't make sense to send these like elaborate, like very strict guidelines for working with an influencer if they're going to be touching your brand, because the whole point of it is to see the collaboration, right? To see how this person who has a specific brand voice puts that brand voice on your product. And that will allow people to kind of see the product in a new lens. It looks like an ad and it looks like a paid ad, and that's not a fit if it's like too strict. So I think understanding that there are different things, right? A campaign that you shoot and you cast with the, photographer yourself is very different than an influencer shoot that you're asking them to produce in style. So I think really looking at them in two lens, not being too scared of letting them put their own spin on it, and liking what they have to say, making sure it's aligned with, your brand values. Obviously, you can't control everything. An influencer does. So that's kind of a obvious point, but I think it can be really powerful for brands.
Feels like that combination of knowing your kind of integrity as a designer, as an entrepreneur, as the product developer, but also being able to allow for some freedom of, I'm going to have this much say in this company, but also my customers are going to drive the ultimate decisions. So finding that magic center is, you have to give up some of that brand control, which is very difficult.
Totally.
And I can't even imagine trying to do it. Now we got to talk about retail, because you have such an interesting retail story. And I know you have so many like incredible business insights on retail. You guys did have Hill House Home had a retail place for a while. You had a storefront for a while. What happened to that retail store? And tell us a little bit about your approach to retail and the way you think about brick and mortar and how it involves your brand from D2C to retail and that entire story. That was a really big question. So, I just opened
okay,
it.
I got it.
Tell me everything about retail.
Tell me everything about retail. The whole industry. So yeah, we had a store on Bleecker Street from 2017, and it was the most beautiful jewel box of a store. I just loved it so much. And that was something we did really early in the business. The rent was like, it was Bleecker Street when Bleecker had just been closed down. Like all those like huge stores that had been there forever had left. And we were basically like the only guy open on the street alongside Magnolia Bakery. So the rents had come down, but the rents were still crazy high for us. This like baby brand really, focused on profitability and focused on low and slow growth. But it was a risk that I wanted to take for a few reasons. One, I think brick and mortar can be such a powerful, powerful thing for a business and such an incredible way to connect with customers in person. So I really wanted a brick and mortar store so that I would have a personal opportunity to speak directly to our customers in person. So that meant that I needed to pick somewhere in a neighborhood where I was going to be a lot, which was the West Village, which is where I live, and really use it as a little test center. So we would test new products in there and ask people what they thought. I would watch people shop, watch people walk around the store and see what they were doing. And these are all things that are totally unscalable, right? Me being in a brick and mortar store every day, but I think that really made sense at the beginning, and I did it for that reason.
Yeah.
As the brand grew, we really outgrew the space. So it was, like 400 square feet and had no dressing rooms. And by the end of the store's lease, we were, had like more than 50% apparel. And we were like, we don't even have a dressing room in this store. So the timing was quite crazy. Our lease was up January 2020. And we were about to kind of sign a lease on another bigger store. And then New York shut down. So I'm happy to report that right now we are close to signing another lease in New York City. So hopefully coming back in the fall, if everything goes according to plan. But yeah, we haven't had a store, kind of all since Jan 2020, and can't wait to have one again.
What's so interesting is it sounds like you were kind of this digitally native brand. But very early in the journey, even before like the D2C goes into retail trend happened, you decided retail is an important part of this brand. And what I think happens in retail a lot of times with D2C is like they can't prove the ROI. They can't do this. They can't do that. And then with the pandemic, they would close stores. And you guys closed stores before the pandemic hit. You grew out of the store. You were too big for the store. And then now you're also saying, we want to go back into brick and mortar. What for you is so powerful about brick and mortar from a business standpoint? It seems like a very like strategic decision you've made to say brick and mortar needs to be a part of this brand when it is right. Why has brick and mortar been a part of that story that you want to focus on so hard?
So I think that the metrics around brick and mortar right now are tricky, right? If you're using the kind of old retail math ways of calculating like the four-wall profitability of a store, it's most likely going to tell you that it's pretty tough. And
yeah.
I understand that. But I think that certainly at the beginning of the business, I was looking at a totally different ROI equation and knew that attribution is really tough, right? Like it's really hard to know if somebody walked by your beautiful storefront on Bleecker and then went home and, made a purchase or was more inclined to even 2 years later. So I think, first of all, you have to have a long-term vision. And second of all, you have to understand that you're not really going to be able to attribute like all of the good things about a store.
What? You
Which
can't
is tricky.
Attribute every single touch point ever? Crazy
I know.
That's crazy.
And I remember even like saying that kind of, 3 or 4 years ago when we first opened our Bleecker. And like I said that to someone, they're like, yeah, but you can get one of the trackers that you walk in and it like, knows exactly. And I'm like, I think we're good. I'm going to go on some intuition here. I think I would like stores to be profitable, right? But do I understand intuitively the kind of halo effect that a great store can have? Yes. And I think that because I understand that connection kind of happens and it's really difficult to measure, we want to make sure that the stores feel really different than online and that we kind of track them in a different way than we do online. So whether that's, a really great place for us to kind of hold in-person events, to highlight, our customers in our like most busy cities like New York City, highlight and celebrate our customers in our most busy cities. I think we're figuring it out, but I think certainly in order to get into brick and mortar in this day and age, you have to be not too attached to attribution and metrics.
Yeah. So are you planning on re-entering brick and mortar? Do you find that a piece of the business that you want to reinvest in? Or because of the pandemic, have you found the opposite reaction of saying, we need to go full e-commerce and just stay there? How have you decided on that future mix of channels?
Yeah, so I think that what we have, certainly we've realized, and we always knew this, our business was always 99.9% direct online on our own site. It always has been. I think that brick and mortar can complement that strategy. And I think that we always see the value in having an in-person place to connect with our customers, but we're not as worried from a revenue perspective. So that means, you're most likely not going to be seeing a Hill House store on every street corner in America, because that's not kind of the revenue focus, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that the beauty and power of being able to walk into a store of a brand you love will always be there. And beloved brands, you will always want to have that kind of emotional in-person experience with, but it just might be, fewer stores. It might be really making those fewer stores more meaningful in other ways. So I definitely see the power, and especially as kind of rents, move up and down and stabilize all across the country, I think it will be fascinating to see how the industry shifts. But I know for Hill House, our plan is to definitely kind of dip our toe back in the water of brick and mortar, as was our original plan, in our home city, in the city that we were built in and that we love so much and that I live in, and then kind of take it from there.
The one thing I want to ask, because you are so good at it on Instagram and over digital, and definitely in retail, you guys have been good at it and will continue to be good at it when you re-enter retail. How tactically do you bring that personal investment into retail? How do you make sure that somebody, like we talk about the power of retail is that human to human interaction. How do you do it? And how do you entrust other people to do it in the way that like it is your brand? You developed it. How do you, from a business standpoint, execute on that on a large scale?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. It's
a big question.
Well, I mean, I think a few things. I really, even though, Hill House is my baby, at the end of the day, controversially, maybe, I don't think of this as my brand, right? Like this is a brand that is the kind of hard work of the most incredible team. And that's not just, the kind of corporate Hill House home team, many of whom have been with me since the very first year that we were in business, but also kind of all along the value chain, like all these people who are just super excited about what we're doing. So I think that makes it both more scary and less scary at the same time. More scary because we are responsible for all these people, but less scary because everybody's in on it together. But I think that, keeping it personal, we genuinely, like, everyone on our team is just so excited, I think, about what we're making. When we get these products in, when we do like our kind of fittings and our product reviews, it's just like the best thing ever. Like there's nothing like seeing something go from like concept in your brain and on a piece of paper or all the way up to kind of finished product. So I think, an in-store is definitely like a opportunity to kind of bring people into that part, right? Like bring them into that, like seeing it from thought to actual product. But it'll be kind of an exciting next year, hopefully, that as we get to have more opportunities to kind of engage in person with both the team and our customers.
Do you think you will re-enter brick and mortar retail again with Hill House?
Like wholesale or?
Either or, I guess. Do you think that there is a future where Hill House Home will come back into retail, whether that's own retail or wholesale retail? Do you find that a channel that you want to invest in? Or do you think D2C is really your kind of like strong sword of a weapon for your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we certainly, hopefully in the next year, we'll have another brick and mortar store. I really hope that happens kind of in the next, 6 to 12 months. I think wholesale is trickier because the margins we just are not able to support the same prices that we would like to be offering our customers if we did wholesale margins. But I think that probably the growth of our business will likely happen on our website and D2C. And hopefully we'll have a brick and mortar strategy that kind of can complement that in different ways.
Listeners, she fell into my podcast trap again.
What was it?
The podcast trap this time was, is this what you should do for your customers? And you said, I don't know. Yeah, because we want to do wholesale. We want to do this, but wholesale doesn't make sense for our customers because we don't want to discount that immensely. Everything I ever say is, hey, make sure your customers are the front and center of every decision you make. So you fell into my trap of, I basically asked you, what are you going to do? And you said, Kristen, I'm going to do whatever my customers tell me they want me to do, which is fantastic. Now, I honestly, I'm going to be pinching myself for 2 weeks after this and the fact that I got to interview you. It's amazing. I am so happy that our worlds got to collide. You are fantastic. I am so impressed with what you've done. I'm not a dress person, and you've convinced me to buy a dress because it seems comfortable. So I'm very excited about it. Thank you so much for being on the show. This has been such a great interview, and I hope that your success continues and that if you open a brick and mortar retail store, I'll be there one day and we can talk in person.
Thank you. This has been so fun. I'm so happy to be on the podcast, and thank you for having me.